Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meeple Leaf Reviews. I'm Jeffrey.
I'm David.
So today we're going to be doing a before and after for Wildcatters, where we take a look at the game before and after our very first play, giving you our initial expectations and first impressions. So David, you're an oil man.
Yes, I try to be.
So tell us about this game.
Yeah, well, it's actually with slight embarrassment that I sit here and now, what day is it today? March 26, 2018, that I'm finally getting to my first play, because I actively seek out different oil games that I can play. And this one is actually, I got an original version of the game. It's been sitting on my shelf for a very long time.
I remember going over to your house and seeing it there. I'm like, I'm going to play my Capstone version before you play that one.
Well, so we tied. Yeah, so we tied. So it's with great anticipation that I'm finally going to get to play this game. But I have to say, so I'm very looking forward to it, because a lot of other oil games that I look for either lack the strategic depth that I'm looking for, they lack the connection to the actual oil industry that I'm looking for. It's kind of thrown on.
Yeah.
And so there's always some reasons why it just doesn't sit well with me. I'm still looking for this quest for the perfect, to me, oil game. And so I'm hoping that this might be it. But I got to say, I'm a little bit disappointed. Do you mind if I have a soapbox moment here?
Go ahead.
Just for a second. I'm disappointed. I really wish that they would have consulted an oil guy for some of the nomenclature in this game. Because, again, it's a theme that draws me in, but after reading the rule books, I'm kind of like, because they talk about building an oil derrick. Well, but that's the exciting part of the oil industry. You need the oil derrick. That's what you actually drill for, to explore for oil. So if you can imagine, you walk out to a new barren landscape and nobody has done any exploration there whatsoever. And then these oil derricks start popping up. And that means someone's got some ideas. They're testing ideas underground. And that's the exploration phase. And they never touch on this. And then they go on to the next phase, which they call drilling for oil, which they have a pump jack. No. A pump jack is something when you start moving more into development phase. Or if you can imagine the reservoir under the ground, it has so much energy when you first drill it, the oil just flows straight to surface. Whereas you put the pump jack on after many people have started drilling there, and it starts becoming more of a development phase, because now you got to suck the oil out like you're sucking a straw of a milkshake. And so then from there we move to the Wildcatter auction. And so then this is a great opportunity. This was actually my last company, where we actually are the little guys trying to get a piece of the pie. Yeah. And I think what they're doing here in the game is going to be awesome, because the Wildcatter auction is through share certificates. Yeah. And so that's what we call a paper deal. So if you're the little guy and a big guy comes in, he says, you know what, I'm going to buy you, but I'm not going to give you cash. I'm going to give you my paper. And so then I'm like, okay, but that's the consolidation phase. That's actually what happens. That's what happened to me in my last company. So we go through that, and then we go through the actual, now you got the big guys. They're good at the actual refinery bit. They're good at the actual transportation bit. And you get the things the oil out to the boats. Yeah. But then they got another lost opportunity here, because when you ship the boats out, well, then when you get to the refineries, if the refineries are full, you got to send it back. Yeah. Well, now we're looking at a glut in supply in the actual oil supply versus the demand, and there's another talking point there. So there's all these things. There's a narrative here that you can wrap a blanket around, which I don't feel that I get when I look at this game, and I'm hoping that the connection will be made as we're playing.
You're just going to. I think you're going to step into this world.
Yes, I certainly hope so. But it's just some of the nomenclature that they used, again, I think was weak and could have been a lot better and told a better narrative. But other than that, I'm pumped to play.
So a couple things that I want to touch on gameplay wise is there's multiple currencies in this game to manage. And from reading the rulebook and kind of watching a few playthroughs of it, it's not readily apparent how I want to be spending that. And I think that's going to be interesting. I think figuring out how I want and how much of my own shares I want to spend is going to be an interesting point in this game.
I totally agree. And I'm wondering if we're going to get to a situation where you might have to take that emergency loan to pay up, because your shares is such a important commodity. Because at first, when I read the rules of the game, I looked at the refinery and I'm like, well, that's awesome. I think I want to be there, because now you're in control of dumping out some of the oil. But at the same token, you still have to pay for that oil upon delivery through your own shares. So I had the same thought. I'm like, so how do I use that? And similarly, how do I get involved with everybody's action? Because there's only 7 rounds, and you only get to work in one region per round.
Yeah, you're only going to get 7 turns the entire game. And I think that's going to bring in a lot of player interaction, a lot of piggybacking, a lot of having to know where are other people wanting to take their actions. Can I get in on the pie, or do I just ignore that area so they can't piggyback off me? I think that's going to be another interesting point in this game.
And will this be a game, whenever you have a game with lots of area majorities, you got the shares, you got the different delivery oil to the different continents, do I want to be kind of second in all of those, or do I want to dominate a couple? Like, what kind of strategies will reveal themselves?
Yeah, and especially in that last round, being last player is going to be, I think, a brutal thing to try and work towards. Because depending on the action card you take, you get in-game points.
Yep.
And if you collect less abilities but more in-game points, you're going to get to determine, hey, I'm going to go last in that last round. I get to see the whole lay of the land, and I'm going to go in and swipe up some different area majorities.
Well, you raise a really good point, because I think that's really cool, because there's games sometimes where you're picking up end game points and that's really all they are.
Yeah.
I really like how they've used that in this game, that you're not only picking up end game points, which are the oil droplets, but you're also positioning yourself perhaps to be in a bit of a power position for the last round. So there's a lot to look forward to here. And the other thing too is I'm curious to see how your plays, because we're playing the Capstone version of the game. And again, I'm like, did I buy the wrong version of the game?
Same thing with Lake Gnome.
Yeah, same thing with Lake Gnome, because I was looking at some of the heavy cardboard stuff. I'm like, well, that's not the same as the rules that I'm reading. And so like consolidation chips, and again, it goes back to my nitpicks on their nomenclature. In the original version, they called the workers dollar bills or bills, and now they got workers. I don't understand why they changed that. Maybe there's a post out there.
Right.
So again, there's a few little things. They got the consolidation chips, the emptying and partial filled refineries. I believe there's a chip now that is worth 2 victory points at the end. That wasn't in the original version. So there's a lot of differences as well that I'm not expecting, because I've only read the original versions.
Well, another thing, going back to the whole money and versus shares thing, I think it's interesting that you have 4 different shares for each of the 4 different people who are going to be playing. And they're not all equal. You have to spend your own when you're taking certain actions, and you need to spend everyone's when you buy those consolidation chips.
Right.
So it's not like you can use them all for everything. So it's kind of a little bit of a management of what colors you have. If I have a bunch of yours, I don't want any more of your shares. I want other people's shares so I can buy those consolidation chips.
Well, so here's an interesting question. My one thing that I'm actually kind of fearful of with this game, other than the theme, but again, that's very superficial, but in terms of gameplay, I'm worried about turn length, because there's a lot of things that occur. Like everything that I ranted about in the beginning of this video, that's all one player's turn. And then even if you dump a refinery, you get your choice of what shares you want to get if you choose to go that direction. I see a lot of analysis paralysis that could potentially rear its ugly head in this game. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you get 7 actions over the course of the game, and the time on the box is 2 hours. So that's allotting a lot of time for everybody's action. I hope that using my expert skills, I'm able to keep the play moving.
Right.
Because, if you don't have someone reminding everyone, okay, hey, this is this phase, this phase, this phase, a game like this where there's a lot of different steps and everyone's going through it could bog the game down.
Yeah, and they do an excellent job of actually creating a play rate. Like, I went through it, and even Heavy Cardboard, when they did it, it was very systematic, and so I love games that actually have that. But again, even for me now, if I know exactly what step I'm on, now I have a choice. I've got to choose, say, 12 shares. Do I take 2 of you and 5 of you?
Hopefully it'll be readily apparent which ones you want, or you've thought about it before. Because that's the other thing, with a lot of downtime, hopefully you're thinking about your turn.
Hopefully.
The other couple things I wanted to mention was I think this game is going to be a little bit fiddly.
Okay.
Especially when you replace those oil derricks with the pump jacks and putting these 3 small oil barrels on there, and then using my
big sausage fingers.
Yes, big sausage fingers, and then putting them on the boat and then taking them off the boat for the refinery. I think that's going to be a little bit fiddly throughout the gameplay. But for my overall expectations, I'm not really sure. It could go either way with me with this game. It could be a really good game for me, or it could be just a meh. And I think where that's going to come down to is the player interaction.
Right.
If I do something and David looks across the table and says some very mean words to me,
I never do that.
then I know it's going to be a good game.
Right.
Because I think that's where it's going to hinge upon. It's not going to be the mechanisms. It's going to be the timing. Who's doing what when? Is someone going to try and force me to take a loan? Can I force you to take a loan and make you a little bit inefficient? I think that player interaction is going to be the kingpin for this game and my enjoyment of it.
Well, I think you raise a good point. I also think there's going to be some of these partial relationships and fleeting partnerships that might exist, because you may be asking people, hey, do you mind taking my train this time, because when you're transporting oil, hey, or I might do you a solid on the refinery, etc. So they don't really focus on that so much in the rules, but I'm curious to see, again, as you say, how that plays out. So my overall expectations, frankly speaking, Unfortunately for Wildcatters, I'm going in with a very high set bar and high expectations. But like you, I'm worried, and this was part of my rant at the beginning, I'm worried that some of the nomenclature or fiddliness will take me away from feeling like an oil man.
Right.
And it'll make me just feel like I'm trading stock, and it'll remove me from the actual theme of the game. I'm hoping that's not the case.
All right, well, let's get it to the table and come back and see what we think of Wildcatters.
Let's do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We played Wildcatters 4-player. I think that's what BGG suggests.
Yeah, and I can't imagine playing it any less because from what I can tell, the only way to scale for 2 and 3 players is playing the additional round. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I think there's a few other changes with some actions that maybe dummy players take. I didn't really look into it, but BGG suggested 4-player, so that's what I wanted to play the game with our first time.
Right.
And it took us 2 hours and 36 minutes. It was a bit longer than I was anticipating. For where I said you only get 7 actions in the entire game, it felt a little bit long.
For me, I don't know, like for a 4-player game with this type of depth, I guess I didn't really actually think about the actual rounds. Yeah. I was anticipating 2+ hours, especially seeing it was a learning game for all of us, so I thought that was reasonable. We can definitely chop some time off of that.
I think so. I think with it being our first game and kind of figuring out, oh, that's how that works, that's how this works, this is the implication of this action.
Yeah.
I think with future plays, you could definitely get that down lower.
Well, yes and no, actually, because one thing is one of my fears coming into the game was that I was worried that the player turns would be too long.
Right.
Whereas I found that, see if you agree with me on this, I found that some turns were almost like micro turns. Like even though you only get those 7 turns, there are some turns where you're just building up because some of the, like for example, workers to build refineries, sometimes they're quite scarce. So you got to save some workers and conserve some things so that you have a bigger ammunition for the next round. So I actually found that things clicked along and I was actually engaged in other players' turns more than I thought I would be.
Yeah, I agree. You're definitely piggybacking, looking at where other people are going. They're transporting, so you get to transport your oil as well. And yeah, you have those big turns where you're like, I'm going to build 2 oil derricks, I'm going to convert them to pump jacks, I'm going to ship, they're going to go here, this refinery is going to empty, this boat's going over here to this refinery, shares are going around the table, and then the next turn, you might just be like, I'm just going to build an oil refinery.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to position myself to maybe piggyback on your big turn this round. And so I found that there was constant engagement throughout the entire game. So even though the game took over 2 hours for the learning game, I found that it went pretty quick. I didn't feel that it was going long. But I am fearful that it may not actually decrease the playing time. Because now that we know what we're doing, we might be paying more attention to like, ooh, I can't do this. Ooh, that's going to make me 1 share short. Because we found a big instance here. A lot of people were taking loans because they couldn't pay out the shares to take oil into their refineries. And that was like a big factor in this game.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned, the multiple currencies in the game with the different kinds of shares, rather than it just being one type of currency. I had a lot of other people's shares, but I needed more of my own.
Yes.
And then I kept being forced to take loans, and I didn't anticipate loans being as bad as what they were, because I owed 75 shares of my own.
You had 3 loans. You had 3 loans. But what was also interesting, I believe in our before comments, we were saying that we thought loans might be detrimental. But I took 1 loan, and then I tied me and another individual. We tied for first because he took 2 loans, but I beat him on the tie break, so I won the game. And you took 3 loans, and all of these were paid at the end of the game, and you weren't far behind.
No, I was like 20 points.
Okay, so 20% behind roughly. But I was surprised by the loans. And what we found was that often the loans had to be taken just 1 action prior to when you got everything because your refinery was filled and you were 1 share short, so you had to take the loan and then you dumped your refinery and then you got all these shares back. So the timing of things was really critical.
Yeah, and I think knowing when to do what action, when can I spend shares on those Wildcatter auctions, when do I need to retain them so I can pay out for my refinery is another instance in this game, because I took a loan just to get involved in a Wildcatter Wildcatter auction. I don't think that was a good idea.
Well, and a lot of the different end of game scorings escalates, right? So Wildcatters, the first 1 or 2 or 3 are, they're really not that critical, but you really need to invest in that strategy. But then at what cost? Because now you're using a lot of your own shares to get these Wildcatters. So then what is that going to take away from in the other part of the game? So I see we were trying to be more well balanced, all of us, and I think there's definitely some levers here just to go full tilt into certain aspects into this game as a winning strategy.
Yeah. The other thing that I didn't appreciate until we actually sat down and started setting up the game is how important that initial setup.
Oh, totally.
Where you put those free oil derricks, that refinery, where you put all... Because I think I put my oil refinery in a bad place at the beginning, putting it in Africa. And you need a boat to get there because no one had built trains there yet. Yeah. So that's why I felt like I was hurting on shares, is because nobody was delivering to my refinery. So, and I believe one of the other players, they put down a train that didn't get used until, like, the last part of the game.
Well, I put down a train that was not used, not used the entire game. And so the initial setup, player turn order even mattered because you're like, well, where are things going? But on that, I really enjoyed the 8 cards that were laid out every round because we had kind of a preview as to where people might be going. Because there's some rounds where it's basically all Russia, all North America, or like split between the two. So it started kind of giving you some focus, and I wasn't imagining that same level of focus. So I thought that was a really neat mechanic in the game as well for where you could do stuff because you found sometimes you're really restricted. You're like, I want to go over here, but
do you pay the 4 points to get a new set of random 8 cards and hopefully get the one you want,
or do you try to manipulate within the environment that the game is providing you? So I thought like it was really quite interesting. But I should also ask you then, I went on my soapbox about the theme before the game, and I think wrongfully so, because honestly I do not feel like this is an oil game whatsoever. And so this is not the oil game I'm looking for. Move along. And the reason why I say that is I felt like this was a logistics game. Yeah. Like you were saying, it's a share management game. But I never once felt like I was an oil explorer or an oil company. I felt like I was FedEx. Yeah, like honestly, like this could be called FedEx the game. And instead of refineries, you have distribution centers. Yeah. Instead of boats, you could have planes. And you could just make it FedEx. You could have the Wilson expansion where you drop off a volleyball for somebody on an island somewhere. But I nowhere at all did I feel like this was just thrown on there. And even this is supposed to be 19th century oil time with Standard Oil and Pacific Oil. I didn't feel that at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. I felt more like I was the logistics manager of a company, not out there in the trenches searching for oil, digging wells and all that stuff. It felt a layer removed from that aspect.
Yeah, and so maybe upon reflection, maybe I'm looking for a game that's centered around a Wildcatter. You know, because now I'm like, maybe I'm asking too much for this game, but it's definitely more of a logistics game, and you could have slapped on a variety of different themes. I said FedEx, and for me, it would have been the same game, the same level of enjoyment for it.
So the last thing that we mentioned in the before segment was we thought the game would be fiddly with a big meat claw.
Yeah.
Did you find the game was fiddly?
Absolutely. Because it's a big board. There's 4 players, and we got 4 grown men playing, and you're trying to add your 3 barrels onto your pump jack on a region way far away. Then it definitely turned out to be, we just ended up throwing the barrels at each other, saying, here, put those on there for me. Yeah. So.
Trying to put them on the boat, and then you move the boat, and they fall off, and then they roll. And it was a little bit fiddly, not so fiddly that it couldn't be overcome, but it was definitely, there were moments in the game where it's just like, I just need this barrel of oil to stay where I'm putting it.
Just stay.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely a little bit fiddly. And again, the other thing too is I found, did you find, like, because of the area control mechanism of it, did you find it all gamery near the end? And I think this is another thing that kind of came back for me that removed me from the theme, because near the end I was just preferentially trying to dump barrels in areas that we hadn't gone to yet, like Australia or Africa. I was just trying to get in there, and then again I felt that removed me from the theme, because instead of feeling like I was getting oil and trying to get it to the best market, instead I was just like, oh, here's an area over here that doesn't have a barrel in it yet. And so I found the last round I felt was just more sprinkling the love.
Yeah, you were min-maxing.
Exactly.
At the end of the game. I definitely felt that as well. You're like, oh, if I put 2 barrels here, I can probably get the majority. And then you're looking at all those things. Whereas at the beginning of the game, there's so much of the game left. You aren't doing that. You're just trying to doing things and playing around with the game mechanisms.
And I guess that's where it goes back to my fears. I'm like, I don't know if this game will get shorter with multiple plays, because the other thing that I wanted to mention as upon reflection as well was, so shares, correct me if I'm wrong, but shares are supposed to be hidden.
Yeah.
Okay, so we found that although our shares were hidden, they were flipped over, we could still see each other's piles because we were organizing, going back to your fiddly bit, we were organizing our piles by share color, so I could see how many you had or whatever. This game needs player boards or player screens, because what I found was there was times when we attacked each other and went to the refinery just to make someone take a loan, just for the pure purpose. We wouldn't have had that information had we been better at keeping our loans, or our shares hidden. But then even then, that becomes, when I have to do lots of card management, it becomes fiddly for me when I have to do that. So I think a player screen would have been an awesome addition to
especially since those 4 share chips are double-sided.
Yeah.
So you can't hide those.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to tell, or it's really hard to hide that information from other players. Yeah, so I definitely agree. A player shield would go a long way. Maybe the next time I'll pull out a player shield that I have for another game and we can try.
And then it allows you to manage your stuff a little bit better without having to, be hidden about it or try to shuffle everything together and try to remember into one deck. So that was the only other thing I was thinking about, because that did change the way we played the game, was having some partial knowledge of what each other was doing.
So what's your overall first impressions of the game?
It's a good game. I like it as a logistics game. I look forward to another play. I'm disappointed, as I've already mentioned, that for me the theme
didn't come alive.
It didn't come alive at all. Instead, I felt more again like a FedEx distributor. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed I want to play with a better hidden aspect. Again, that's why I mentioned the player screens, just so that there's gonna be more tension, I think, because you're like, okay, I only got 1 share left. Please don't know. Please don't know. Whereas now we can still kind of figure that out. So I don't feel that we played with the way that we had our shares visible, even though they're turned down. I don't think that we introduced the same level of tension that the game might otherwise get. So I'm looking forward to it. But again, like I said, I came in flying high, and now I'm right about here. I'll play it again, but I'm not as pumped as I was an hour ago.
So for my first impressions, it kind of landed where I thought. I went in kind of middle of the road with my expectations, and that's kind of where I am coming out of the first play. But I think this is one where you need to get one play under your belt because of how important that setup is. You need to see that one play, and I think the next time we play, you'll be able to make better decisions earlier in the game, because those are going to compound. Your earlier decisions, where you're set up, where you've placed things, are going to set up your turns for later in the game. So playing through that whole game, I think the second time, the third time, the fourth time, it'll just get better.
Well, and in addition to that, on the flip side, I didn't imagine or forecast in my mind just how many things are left stranded out on the map as well. So near the end of the game, you're like, oh, wait a second, I'm not getting that Wildcatter chip unless someone transports. And so then it started becoming a big deal. And so there's lots of stranded stuff. And I guess going into the game, I kind of thought I would just mop it all up. But no, you have to actively go get it or actively be involved. So again, that would have changed some of my decisions. So I completely agree. I definitely want to give this game a fair shot now that we got the landscape figured out.
Cool. All right. Well, that's our first impressions of Wildcatters. Go down, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.